Okay, so a couple of days ago, I had some questions about COVID, and I had some questions, and I called some friends of mine in Australia, and we decided to do some research together to see if what was happening in our country was happening in their country too, especially with the data. I was especially distressed because Toledo announced that they were suspending all testing for the general public, and they were only going to give tests to people who are in the hospital, very sick, and that's the only people they were going to test. Well, that does not give us an accurate picture of what is going on. So what I did was I had some questions, and these were my questions. What are the population's density of each state, and how is testing being conducted in those states? What are the documented number of tests that states are reporting and completing? What is the outcome in terms of what they are getting for positive results? What's the percentage of positive outcomes for what they test for? Is there a difference between wealthy states and less wealthy states? Like, are only the rich states getting a lot of materials and a lot of tests? And was there a difference between red states and blue states? In other words, red states, states that voted for Trump in the last election versus states that did not. And then finally, we're looking at a big comparison between the United States and Australia. So here's what you're looking at here. I mean, as you can see, I have them listed in red and blue. These are the states and these are the categories that I was looking at. So first I looked at the state. These are the blue states that went for Trump, and then the red did not go for Trump, sorry, and the red states that did. And then I looked at their population, all the states' populations, and then how many tests did they do? And then how many of those tests were positive? And then what is their ranking? What is their percent positive rate? Okay, now remember these tests were a few days ago, although these data are from a few days ago. Also, the things that you have to know is we don't know how these states are testing. Are these states testing everyone in the population? Just the people who are sick? Just the people who are in the hospital? How are they testing? We don't know that. And when you look at official sources of data, they don't say that either. So this is all archival. For instance, we know that in Toledo, Ohio, there's a 2-week lag on getting your test results in. So, okay, let's say I test on March 17th and my test results come in today and it says that I'm negative. Okay, well, what have I been doing since March 17th to today? Well, I've been going out to the store and I've been going out to restaurants, doing takeout, but still coming into contact with other people. So even though it comes out negative, it could really be positive because I didn't take any precautions between the time that I tested and the time that the test came in. So that's part of the problem with COVID. And then you magnify that by other states and then you see what I'm saying. So this is what I'm looking at. So you look at like Connecticut, who has a population of 3.5 million, and they tested 2,300 people. And so from those 2,300, they got 194 that were testing positive, or a percent positive of 8%. So let's go way down to Ohio. Okay, so here's Ohio. Ohio is the 7th most populated state. It has 11.69 million people, but they have only done 551 tests. But of those 551 tests, 247, remember this is data from a couple of days ago, so 247 of those people tested positive with a percent positive rate of 44%. My question is twofold. Number one, why does Ohio, with the 7th largest population, only test 551 people, where Connecticut, that has, so far less than half the population, they get to test 2,300 people, and their percent rating is only 8%. So this is what I mean. These numbers are out there. They're hiding in plain sight, but nobody's looking at the whole big picture, which is what I did because I said, hey, what are we doing in the United States? And what are we doing state by state? And what is Australia doing? So if you look at New York, which is really having problems, they have 19.4 million people. They tested 45,000, and they positive was 10,356, and their percent positive rate is 23%. Now compare New York State to look at this one. This one right here is 80%. Who is that? That would be New Jersey, which is close to New York. But New Jersey has 9 million people, so still less than Ohio. 9 million people, and they did 1,661 tests. And of those 1,600, 1327 came up positive, or an 80% positive rate, which is even more than New York State. So you have to ask yourself, is New Jersey only testing people in the hospital who are showing symptoms, or is this the general population? Because we don't know that. And they're not saying that on their website. So that's really interesting. But some of the states are really interesting. Like, why are some of these states that are really small? So if you look at Ohio, out of all these other states, Ohio, there's only 6 other states ahead of Ohio in terms of population. So you would naturally think that Ohio, if Ohio is the 7th largest population, Ohio should have the 7th largest amount of tests given. But we're only doing 551. So what gives with that? You know, look at this one, 8,239, and that is Florida, okay? So you have states that have much less. Wisconsin, look at Wisconsin. They did 4,967 tests, and their population is 6 million. Ohio is almost twice as populated as Wisconsin, yet they're giving thousands more tests than Ohio is. And Wisconsin has a yield rate of, I'm trying to look over here, a yield rate of 5.6 rate of positive, people testing positive. So that is a way that you can look at a problem, and then you have to pick out what independent variables are you interested in. So you could look at, for me, it was, I want to know, why is Ohio not testing as much as other states, especially other states that are less than them. And the reason that less populated than them, the reason that Ohio gave was we just don't have the tests available to us. Well, then why does Connecticut have so many tests? I mean, they don't have the population. Why does Wisconsin have so many tests? So that tells me that either Ohio was completely not prepared for this in terms of having tests available to them, or they're only testing the most serious cases, which is why they have such a high yield. And so we don't know what it is. We also don't have a picture of, is this the same for every state? We don't know if the testing procedures are uniform in every state, if they're using the same tests in every state, if they're reporting all their data in the same way. The governor of Ohio came on TV and said that President Trump instructed them not to give out any unemployment information until once a week. And the governor of Ohio said, well, we'll keep track of the data. Thank you very much. And we'll just report it once a week. So you can't just not do data, but you can take any existing database and then play with the numbers to see what you get. So you can pick whatever independent variables you want to look at. When I looked at the red states and the blue states, I found that there was no statistical difference between, who voted for Trump and who didn't. I made a chart and a graph here. I used a median split, so I looked at the top 25 states and the bottom 25 states. When I looked at the high test states and the low test states, the states that tested a lot, the difference in testing was 6,579 compared to 706. So that's a big difference between states that were testing a lot. I also found that wealthier states, I looked at the GDP for each state, and I found that states that had a higher GPA or were gross domestic product, GDP, states that had a higher GDP also gave out more tests. So that's very interesting. So if you belong in a wealthy state, you're doing more tests. The only exception was, of course, Ohio, which had a higher GDP. They were in the top 25, but they did a lot less testing. As a matter of fact, Ohio stood out as being the most populated state and in the higher bracket for GDP that did the least amount of testing. So that's kind of troubling if you live in Ohio, but I need an explanation, so I need more information. The other thing about GDP is that these states that are more wealthy are also confounded by an intervening variable, which is that they're more highly populated. So, of course, they're going to do more testing or have more resources available to them, except for Ohio. Once again, the outlier in all the data. And then I looked at the difference in the high testing states and the low testing states. I made sexy graphs. So here's the ranking by states, and I put in their percent positives as well. So you have a state like South Dakota over here at the bottom, where they're only getting 1.4% that are positive per test that were done. And these are the orange ones are the low testing states. And these are the highest positive ratings. We get positive ratings. And so you look here at Alabama, they have an 81% yield on how many they tested. So that tells me maybe they're testing in hospitals. Or if they're testing the general population, wow, 81% of them are walking around with positive. I really think that it's just that they're testing in hospitals and only testing their most serious cases. But I don't know that for sure. Other ones that are surprising are New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware. We're only hearing about New York in the news. And as you can see, New York's positive rate is 23%. Even Michigan's is higher. Michigan's has been climbing in recent days. And so is Ohio's and Delaware. And I have to wonder if these states are only doing their tests to people in the hospital or who have great symptomology. So that's really interesting. So that's just an example of what you can do. Now you could also have a problem and go out and run your own data. So let's say you wanted to do interview people and give them a stress test. How many of them are feeling stress during COVID times? And you can go out and you can do a random sampling of people as well. But that would be an example of here's the problem, and I'm trying to find something out about the problem, and I'm going to choose my own independent variables, my own dependent variables. I'm going to design my own study. So everything you've been learning all semester, this is that applied to, how you find those variables and structure those variables when you have a question about an issue at hand and you apply it. So that will be your next test. For the undergrads, that will be your test 2. For the grads, that will be your test 3. I will give you problems in the world and you will have to come up with a way to test it. Again, you can test it by, I think these are the most important variables, or you can say, like one of the variables I'm going to do in this next set of data, and we're doing in Australia, my Australian colleagues are a little bit ahead of me because I wanted to see what was happening by racial groups. Are people having the same access to testing by race and gender than those who routinely get tested? So I want to know about the racial and gender disparities that exist. And they found out in Australia already that there are huge racial and gender disparities in testing. So that's a very interesting thing. Also, wealth might be another good thing to look at. Are rich people getting tested more than poor people? We have a joke going around that how do you know if you test positive, stand by a rich guy and wait till he sneezes on you and then wait for his tests to come in. That's, crass public information that's out there. So I hope you understand how you go from problem to structuring research using this example. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. If you need help in your test as you're doing it, of course, you can always call me and I will give you ideas about how to restructure or look at different dependent measures or things like that. Okay, everybody. Hope you understand that and hope you stay healthy and safe. And there we go. Hey, there we go. Great day to be a dragon. Take care now.